That conversation you almost didn't have? That trip you almost didn't take? That decision you almost postponed? What if your almost was the very thing God intended to use? God says, stop dismissing the small things. I can use anything to position you. Even in the Bible, big miracles started with small steps. David brought bread and cheese to his brothers and ended up facing Goliath. A widow offered a small jar of oil and saw it multiply into abundance. A boy gave his lunch and thousands were fed. Your future may begin in a way that doesn't look spectacular at first. Don't despise it. Some of you have been looking for a sign, and here it is. God is saying this directly to you because He knows what's about to unfold, and He doesn't want you distracted when it happens. You've been asking, when will it be my turn? God's answer is sooner than you think, but your preparation will determine There are moments when the air feels heavy with meaning, when even the quiet seems to carry a weight you can't explain. Today is one of those moments. God is not speaking to you by accident right now. This is not coincidence, and it's not random. He says it's very urgent. It's about your future. Some of you have been walking through days that feel ordinary, but in the unseen, heaven has been making decisions on your behalf. There are plans, alignments, and breakthroughs already moving towards you, but they require your awareness. This is why God brought you here today. Because what's ahead is not just another day on the calendar, it's a turning point. You've been wondering why the past weeks have felt so strange, why doors you thought would open have stayed shut, why familiar people have drifted away, why certain opportunities have suddenly dried up. And if you're honest, you've been battling questions you never said out loud. Am I still on the right path, or did I miss something? God says, you didn't miss it. You're right where you're supposed to be. But there's something critical you need to hear before you step into the next season. Sometimes urgency isn't about danger. It's about timing. I want you to picture a train. You can't see it yet, but it's already approaching the station. It won't wait forever. You can't casually stroll toward it while checking your phone. You have to be alert, ready, and at the platform when it arrives. That's how your future looks right now. God is saying, pay attention. The train is coming. Not long ago, I spoke with someone who told me how they almost missed a life-changing moment. They were offered an opportunity that seemed small, a meeting with the person they barely knew. They thought about rescheduling, but something in their spirit said, go. That meeting led to a partnership that changed their finances, their relationships, and their purpose. It wasn't luck, it was alignment. That's what God is preparing for you, but you need to be in the right place spiritually, mentally, and emotionally when it arrives. God says, your future is not in danger of being lost, but it can be delayed if you ignore my voice. You see, the enemy doesn't have to destroy your future to win. He just has to distract you until you miss your moment. And distractions are everywhere right now. The confusion, the noise, the endless opinions pulling you in different directions. That's why God is sounding the alarm in your spirit. It's urgent. Focus. Some of you feel this stirring because your spirit has already sensed the shift. The world may look the same, but inside, something is shifting gears. The pace is picking up, and you can't afford to drag the weight of old disappointments into this new season. God says, release it. The hurt, the grudges, the regret, they cannot travel with you where you're going. Think of it like a flight. You're at the gate, ready to board. The announcement comes, this flight is boarding now. Final call. You can't run back home to grab extra luggage. You can't debate whether you really want to go. If you hesitate, the door will close and the plane will leave you without it.
Spiritually, that's where you are. This is the final call for certain things in your life. God says, stop delaying what I've told you to do. Start preparing for what I've promised. Preparation is not just about planning, it's about trust. It's about moving forward even when you can't see every detail. Some of you have been waiting for a perfect sign before taking action, but in God's kingdom, obedience is the sign. You step, and then the path appears. I think of Peter stepping out of the boat. The water wasn't solid until his foot touched it. He didn't get the reassurance first, he got it after he moved. Right now, God is calling you to take that step, to send the message, to fill out the application, to make the call, to start the project. Not later, now, because your future is tied to the seed you plant today. And here's the truth. You already know the area where God has been nudging you. It's the thing you've been feeling in your heart, but you've been putting off. The dream that scares you. The change you've been avoiding. The conversation you've been postponing. God says, stop waiting for the perfect moment. This is the moment. I don't know who this is for, but I feel this deeply. There are divine alignments being set for you right now. God is arranging introductions, opportunities, and resources you haven't even prayed for yet, and they will only meet you if you move. This is why he says it's urgent, not because you're in danger, but because you are about to step into something bigger than you imagined. But before you step forward, you need to let go of the fear that whispers, "What if I fail?" Listen, God is not asking you to be fearless. He's asking you to be faithful. Fear may walk beside you, but faith decides where you step. And when God is the one calling you, your steps are not guesses, they're guided. So here's what I want you to do today. Take one action toward the thing God has been placing on your heart. Just one. Write it down, speak it out, tell someone you trust. Move it from your thoughts into reality, because that small act will signal to heaven, I'm ready for what's next. This is the beginning of a new chapter. And if you'll lean into his voice now, you will look back on this day as the moment everything started to shift. God says, it's urgent. It's about your future. And I'm about to surprise you.
You may not feel it yet, but something in your life has already started moving. It's like the first quiet tremor before an earthquake, subtle, almost unnoticeable, but it signals that a deep shift is underway. God says, I'm setting the stage for something you've been waiting for, and it's closer than you think. Some of you have been in a season of delay so long that you've started adjusting your dreams to match your current reality. You've stopped expecting the big things because the waiting became exhausting. But I need you to hear this. The delay was not denial. It was preparation. Every step, every challenge, every closed door, it was building something inside you that you would need for what's ahead. Let me tell you about a woman I once knew. She was waiting for a promotion at work. She did everything right, worked hard, stayed late, stayed faithful, but the promotion went to someone else. She cried, she prayed, she wondered why God didn't open the door. Months later, that department went through layoffs. The person who took that position lost their job. Meanwhile, she was offered a new role in a completely different department, one that paid more, had better hours, and allowed her to use gifts she didn't even know she had. If she had gotten what she wanted when she wanted it, she would have been out of work. But God had something better, and the delay was her protection. Some of you right now are in the middle of that kind of protection. You think God is holding something from you, but he's actually holding something for you. This is why he says it's urgent, not because he's panicking, but because there's a moment approaching where you need to be ready to receive what's been prepared. And readiness is more than just being willing. It's about alignment. If God put it in your hands today, would your heart be ready to handle it? Would your habits be strong enough to sustain it? Would your faith be anchored enough to carry the weight of the blessing without collapsing under pressure? Sometimes God delays the gift so he can prepare the hands that will hold it. There's a verse that says, "To whom much is given, much will be required." We love the first part, the much is given. We forget the second, the much will be required. And that's the part God is addressing right now, because what's ahead for you is not small. It's going to require strength, focus, and obedience on a new level. Think of a runner. They don't just show up to the starting line after sitting on the couch for months. They train. They discipline their bodies. They adjust their diets. They practice the start over and over because they know when that starting gun fires, they have to be ready to launch. That's you right now. Your starting gun moment is coming. God says, prepare now so you can run without hesitation. This is not the time to get tangled in old arguments, petty distractions, or toxic cycles that keep stealing your energy. Every time you give attention to something that drains you, you're handing away the strength you'll need for what's next. I remember a young man who told me how he lost an opportunity because he wasn't paying attention. He'd been waiting for a job call for months, but when it finally came, he ignored an unknown number on his phone. Twice. By the time he called back, the position had been filled. It wasn't that God didn't send the opportunity. It was that he wasn't alert enough to recognize it. That's what God is warning you about. Stay spiritually awake. Keep your heart sensitive to his nudges. Don't assume the next call, the next meeting, or the next email is just another thing. When heaven is aligning your future, the small details can be the bridge to the big breakthrough. If you've been praying for a change in your finances, your relationships, or your calling, then hear this clearly. You cannot stay where you are and reach where God is taking you. This is the moment to move. Even if it's one step, even if it's uncomfortable, because faith is not waiting for the fear to leave. Faith is moving while the fear is still there. Picture this. A door is about to open. On the other side is everything you've been praying for: restoration, opportunity, provision. But the door isn't going to open forever. If you hesitate, the moment passes. If you overthink, the lock clicks again. God is urging you now because he doesn't want you standing in the hallway when he's already prepared the room. So here's the challenge for you today. And I say this with love. Stop treating your calling like it's optional. If God has given you an assignment, it's not a suggestion. It's a trust. And when you step into it, you'll see why the timing mattered so much. This next chapter of your life is going to surprise people, including you. You'll look back at the closed doors, the delays, the confusing seasons, and you'll say, now I understand. Now I see what God was doing. But that clarity will only come if you follow his leading now. God says it's urgent because your future is waiting for you, but you have to meet me halfway. This is not the time to shrink back. It's not the time to get stuck in analysis. It's not the time to let fear have the final word. Take the step. Send the message. Have the conversation. Make the move. Your obedience today is the seed for your breakthrough tomorrow. And God is saying, plant it now.
There's a reason you're hearing this right now. You might think you stumbled across this message by accident, but God does not deal in accidents. When he says it's urgent, he's not trying to scare you. He's trying to position you. He knows what's coming in your life, both the blessings and the battles. And he's giving you this word now so that when it arrives, you won't be caught off guard. Sometimes the most dangerous thing is not the battle itself, but being unprepared for it. Think of a soldier. The battle may not start until next week, but if he waits until the gunfire begins to put on his armor, he's already too late. That's why this moment matters for you. God is saying, put your armor on now. Don't wait until the day it's tested. Some of you have been living as if there's more time, as if the changes you know you need to make can be postponed until later. But later has a way of never coming, and opportunities have a way of leaving when they're ignored. This is why God is speaking with urgency, because there is a window over your life right now, and He will not remain open forever. I knew a man who felt led to invest in a small business his friend was starting. The numbers didn't look spectacular, so he hesitated. Months later, that same business exploded in growth, and those who partnered early saw life-changing returns. He told me it wasn't that God didn't give me the chance, it was that I didn't recognize it for what it was. That's what God is guarding you against. He doesn't want you to miss what He's preparing just because it doesn't look like the final blessing yet. God says, don't wait until it's obvious to obey me. Because the truth is, obedience before understanding is faith. Obedience after understanding is just agreement. And God rewards faith. There's someone hearing this who has been afraid to take the next step because it feels risky. And yes, faith will always have an element of risk in human eyes. But what you call risk, heaven calls obedience. And when obedience lines up with God's timing, it produces fruit you could never manufacture on your own. Think of Noah. Building a massive ark when there wasn't a cloud in the sky looked ridiculous to everyone around him. But obedience didn't wait for the rain. And because of that, when the flood came, he was ready. Your ark moment is here. It may not make perfect sense yet. People may not understand, but you're not building for their approval. You're building for God's purpose. The enemy's biggest tactic right now is not to destroy your destiny, but to delay it until you're too tired to pursue it. That's why you felt the weight, the distractions, the fatigue. Because if he can keep you occupied with what drains you, you won't have the energy for what God is releasing. That's why God is saying, pull your focus back, guard your energy, protect your time. I think about a woman who felt God nudging her to start writing the book that had been on her heart for years. She kept saying, I'll start when life slows down. But life didn't slow down. It got busier. One day, she realized years had passed and the book was still unwritten. God is sparing you from that regret. He's calling you to move now, not when you feel ready. And here's the truth. Readiness is rarely a feeling. It's a decision. You choose to move forward even if your knees are shaking. You choose to trust God's voice even when the outcome is still hidden. And as you move, His grace meets you on the road. God says, I'm not asking you to figure it all out. I'm asking you to take the next step I've shown you. That step might be a conversation. It might be submitting that application. It might be ending something that no longer aligns with your calling. It might be finally beginning the thing you've been putting off. Whatever it is, do it now, because delayed obedience can become disobedience. This is also a time to watch who's speaking into your life. Some voices will encourage your faith. Others will feed your fear. If you let the wrong voices get louder than God's voice, you'll hesitate in moments when you should move. And hesitation in a moment of destiny can cost you years. God is not calling you to be careless. He's calling you to be fearless in His leading. That means you don't have to rush ahead of Him, but you also can't keep dragging your feet when He says, go. Here's something you need to hear. Your future is not just about you. Your obedience will ripple into the lives of people you haven't even met yet. The decisions you make today will impact generations. That's why the enemy wants you stuck. If he can keep you frozen, he can keep you from unlocking what God has placed inside you for others. This next season will require faith that doesn't wait for perfect clarity.
because the path won't be fully lit until you take the first few steps. It's like walking at night with a flashlight. You only see a few feet ahead, but as you keep moving, more of the path comes into view. That's how God leads, step by step, moment by moment. So don't wait until you see the whole map before you start the journey. Start moving with what you have, because when you do, heaven starts releasing what's next. I believe this is your confirmation. You've been praying for a word, for a sign, for some clarity. And God is saying, this is it. Don't let the moment pass. Because the thing about divine timing is that when it comes, it doesn't knock twice the same way. God says, I'm preparing you for something beyond what you've prayed for, but you must position yourself to receive it. That means removing what's been blocking you. That means closing doors to what's been draining you. That means showing up where I've told you to show up. The urgency is not to frighten you, it's to awaken you, because your future is already in motion, and God wants you to be in step with Him when it arrives. You will look back on this moment and realize this was the day the tide started turning.
There are moments when God speaks softly, and then there are moments when He raises His voice in your spirit. This is one of those moments, not because He is angry, but because He knows how important this window is for you. God says, your next chapter is already written, but your readiness will determine how quickly you step into it. Some of you are standing right at the edge of change. You can sense it. Your spirit feels restless, your thoughts are unsettled, and you can't shake the feeling that something is about to happen. That's not your imagination. That's divine preparation. It's like standing on the shore, watching the tide pull back farther than usual. To the untrained eye, it might look like nothing is happening, but if you know the ocean, you understand the pullback means a powerful wave is coming. That's what your life feels like right now. The pulling back you've been experiencing is not loss. It's the setup for a stronger surge. Some of you have been interpreting this season as a step backward, but heaven sees it as a step into position. God says, don't fight the pullback. Use it to plant your feet for the wave that's coming. I remember meeting a man who lost his job unexpectedly. At first, he felt devastated, confused, angry, and uncertain. But during those weeks of unemployment, he began working on a small idea that had been in his heart for years. That idea turned into a business. That business turned into a movement that changed his life. He told me later, if I had stayed where I was, I never would have stepped into what God had for me. That's the hidden urgency here. Your comfort zone might be the very thing holding you back. The enemy wants you to believe that your current stability is safer than God's unknown plan. But the truth is, there is no safer place than the center of His will, even when it feels uncertain. God says, stop clinging to what I'm trying to move you from. If you keep holding on to the familiar, you'll never have room to receive the new. This is why He's been gently, and sometimes not so gently, shaking certain things loose in your life. It's not cruelty, it's preparation. Think about how a gardener works. When they plant a seedling in a pot, it grows only to the size of that container. But if it's going to become what it's meant to be, it has to be uprooted and placed into a larger space. The process feels like disruption to the plant, but it's actually expansion. That's what God is doing with you right now. But here's the thing. When you're being uprooted, it's tempting to panic. It's tempting to say, God put me back where I was. But where you were can't hold what's about to grow in you. Some of you are in relationships, jobs, or habits that were fine for the last season, but they're too small for the future God is preparing. And He knows you won't leave them unless He creates the kind of urgency that pushes you to move. That's why He's speaking so strongly now. God says, this is your moment to step forward. Don't let fear make the decision for you. Because here's the truth, fear is loud right before breakthrough. The closer you are to stepping into your next season, the louder fear will shout.
not because it's stronger, but because it's desperate. I think about the story of Joshua leading the Israelites into the Promised Land. The moment before they crossed the Jordan River, God told Joshua, "Be strong and courageous." Why? Because even though the promise was close, there was still a battle to fight before stepping into it. Your promise is close, but you have to walk forward with courage to claim it. Courage doesn't mean you won't feel afraid. It means you've decided that fear won't get the final vote. And when God says it's urgent, He's not asking you to rush recklessly. He's asking you to act intentionally, to start making decisions that align with the person you're becoming, not the person you've been. This is where many people miss it. They hear God's promise, but keep living in patterns that contradict it. They pray for a new chapter, but keep rehearsing the old one. God says, if you want what I have next, you have to start walking like it's already yours. I once heard someone say, don't dress for the job you have, dress for the job you want. Spiritually, that applies here. Live today as if you're already carrying the future God has promised you. Talk like it, think like it, prepare like it. And be ready, because when the wave hits, it will come faster than you expect. Opportunities will appear suddenly. Conversations will happen unexpectedly. Doors will swing open that you thought were permanently shut. When that happens, you don't want to be scrambling to catch up. You want to be ready to walk through without hesitation. God says, your preparation is your signal to heaven that you're serious. So start. Start now, even if it's imperfect, even if it's small, because small beginnings are often the seedbed of big breakthroughs. This urgency you feel is not anxiety, it's alignment. It's heaven pulling you forward into exactly the place you're meant to be. If you lean in now, the pace of your breakthrough will accelerate. If you ignore it, the process will still happen, but it may take longer than it needed to. God's timing is perfect, but your participation matters. That's why He's telling you, don't delay. This is the season to move. By the time we reach the end of this journey together, I believe you'll see why He kept repeating this word to you. And right now He's saying, trust me enough to take the step before you see the finish line.
You've probably noticed it by now. The quiet changes, the restlessness in your spirit, the way certain things you used to tolerate now feel heavy and out of place. That's not random. That's God preparing you for a future that doesn't look like your past. God says, I've been shifting things you can't see to position you where you need to be. You may feel like life is slowed down or even stalled, but heaven is not idle. Heaven is working ahead of you. And the reason God says it's urgent is because there is a moment coming when everything will move quickly. It's like watching a bow being drawn back. For a moment, it looks like nothing is happening. The arrow isn't moving forward. But in reality, the tension is building for a release that will send it flying farther than it could ever go without that pull. That's where you are. The tension you've been feeling isn't punishment, it's potential. I once met a woman who told me she'd been waiting years for a change in her life. She prayed, she worked, she stayed faithful, but nothing seemed to move. Then, within a single month, she was offered a new job, moved to a new city, and met the person who would become her closest friend and business partner. She said, it felt like my whole life turned in 30 days, but when I looked back, I realized God had been setting it up for years. Some of you are right before your 30-day shift, and God's urgency right now is to make sure you're ready when it hits. Because when the wave comes, you won't have time to prepare. You'll have to be prepared already. God says, get your heart in order, get your priorities in order, get your faith in order. If you've been meaning to spend more time with Him, start now. If you've been meaning to forgive, do it now. If you've been meaning to take that step of obedience, take it now. Delays in obedience create delays in destiny, and this is not a season to add unnecessary delay to your life. Think of Esther in the Bible. She didn't know when her moment to stand before the king would come,
but she prepared herself daily. So when the moment arrived, she didn't scramble, she stepped in. Your Esther moment is on the way, and your preparation now is the difference between hesitation and confidence later. I want you to picture your life like a road. Some parts are smooth and easy. Others have sharp turns and sudden stops. But right now, you're approaching a green light, and when it turns, you'll have the chance to accelerate into a new chapter. The only question is, will you be ready to drive when the light changes? I remember hearing about a man who kept all his savings in a box at home because he didn't trust banks. For years, that money just sat there, losing value to inflation. One day, he was offered a chance to invest in a growing company, but he didn't have the funds readily available in a usable form, so he missed it. It wasn't that God didn't bring the opportunity, it was that he wasn't positioned to take it. That's why positioning matters so much right now, because some blessings have expiration dates, not because God is unkind, but because certain doors only open in certain seasons. God says, the season for your next step is here. Don't let it pass while you're still debating. Debate can be the enemy of destiny. If you keep waiting for absolute certainty, you'll talk yourself out of what faith was meant to lead you into. I think about Peter again. He didn't ask Jesus to calm the storm first before stepping out of the boat. He stepped in the middle of the storm because Jesus was the invitation. Right now, Jesus is the invitation for you. The circumstances may not look ideal. You might not have every detail, but you have the Word, and that's enough to move. This is also a season where you must guard your vision. Not everyone can see what God has placed in your heart, and if you share it with the wrong people, their doubt can infect your faith. Some people will call your step foolish, but they're not called to it. You are. God says, walk with those who speak life into your vision, not fear into your spirit. This doesn't mean you cut everyone off, but it does mean you're careful about who gets influence over your decisions. And here's something important. Your future is not just about a single big moment. It's about a series of smaller obediences that lead you there. Too often we wait for a massive sign, when in reality, God has been speaking in small ways all along. The text that caught your attention, the conversation that stirred something in you, the persistent thought you can't shake. Those are the seeds of your next chapter. If you ignore them, you may end up praying for a miracle that's already trying to meet you. That's why God says it's urgent, not to make you anxious, but to make you attentive. And I need you to understand this. Your obedience in this season will open doors for others too. Someone's answer to prayer is on the other side of your yes to God. You might not see it now, but years from today, someone could look back and say, because they moved, my life changed. That's how big your obedience is. So don't let fear, doubt, or waiting steal this moment from you. Step forward, even if it feels small, even if no one else understands, because heaven understands, and heaven is already making room for what's coming. God says, this is not the end, this is the turning point, but you must turn when I tell you. If you keep walking the same path out of habit, you'll miss the new road I'm trying to lead you onto. Listen closely, stay sensitive, and when you hear the whisper, move.
You felt it in your spirit lately, that tug, that unshakable sense that something is coming, even if you can't explain it. It's like when the air shifts before a storm. You can't see the clouds yet, but you know the atmosphere is changing. That's where you are right now. And God says, it's urgent because what I'm about to release will require your full attention. Some seasons in life move slowly, allowing you to coast, but this is not one of them. This is a season where pace matters, where your readiness matters, because when God moves, He moves suddenly, and suddenly leaves no time for hesitation.
I once met a man who had been preparing for years to open his own business. He studied, planned, saved money, but he never actually launched. Then one day, a prime location became available, and he hesitated. By the time he decided, it was gone. He told me later, "It wasn't that I wasn't prepared. I just didn't move when my moment came." That's the danger God is warning you about right now. Opportunities from heaven are like waves. You can't control when they come, but you can be ready to catch them when they do. Miss the wave, and you'll find yourself waiting for another, sometimes for years. That's why God is saying, be ready to paddle when I say now. Some of you have been asking, but how will I know it's the moment? Here's the answer. You'll feel a peace that outweighs the fear. Not a lack of nervousness, that's normal, but a settled knowing in your spirit that says, this is the step. And when you feel that, you move. God says, I will confirm my timing to those who are listening for my voice. That's the key, listening. Not rushing ahead, not dragging behind, just walking in step with Him. This is also a time to remove the unnecessary weight you've been carrying. Picture yourself running a race with a heavy backpack. You might still make it to the finish line, but it will be harder, slower, and more exhausting than it needs to be. Some of you have been running with emotional weight, grudges, regret, comparison, guilt. God says, lay it down. You don't need it for where you're going. I knew a woman who carried bitterness for years after someone betrayed her. She thought holding onto it would protect her, but the truth was it was slowing her down. The moment she chose to forgive, new opportunities started appearing in her life. She said, it was like something unclogged in my spirit. That's what happens when you release what was never meant to be carried into your future. Some of you need to hear this. The weight you're carrying is not part of your identity, it's part of your history. And your history is not your destiny. God says, this is the season to travel light because I'm about to take you further, faster. You cannot afford to be so weighed down by yesterday that you miss tomorrow. Think about the Israelites in the wilderness. When God told them to move, they had to be ready to pack up and go. They didn't know the exact destination, but they knew they couldn't stay where they were. That's you right now. You may not have the full picture yet, but you know this isn't your final stop. And here's the beautiful thing. God never calls you without preparing the path ahead. Even if you can't see it, it's there. Even if it feels hidden, it's already unfolding. This is where trust comes in. Not trust in the path, but trust in the one who made it. Because the truth is, you don't have to know every turn to take the next step. You just have to know His voice. I want you to think about a GPS. You don't get every direction at once. You get the next turn, then the next, then the next. That's how God works. He gives you enough to move forward, but not so much that you don't need Him. So if you've been waiting to see the entire blueprint before starting, hear this. You're not going to get it. Not because God is hiding it from you, but because He's walking it with you. God says, I'm not asking you to understand everything. I'm asking you to trust me with everything. Your future isn't fragile in His hands. And the urgency isn't about panic, it's about preparation. This next part is important. When the moment comes, don't downplay it. Sometimes God answers our prayers in ways that look smaller than we expected. But small doors can lead to big rooms. That one meeting, that one introduction, that one opportunity. Don't dismiss it just because it doesn't look like the whole promise yet. I think about David again. Killing Goliath was a defining moment, but it began with simply delivering bread to his brothers. If he had thought, this isn't important, he never would have stood on the battlefield. You never know which small act of obedience will unlock your next chapter. That's why God says, do not despise the day of small beginnings.
So here's the challenge right now. Be fully present. Be fully listening. Be fully ready. Because when the green light comes, you will not have to guess. You'll know. And when you know, you move. Your future is calling, and heaven is ready. The only question is, will you be in position when the moment arrives?
There's a reason you've been sensing this pull in your spirit lately. You've been feeling that mix of anticipation and uncertainty, almost like standing in an airport, ticket in hand, but not yet hearing your boarding call. God says, the call is coming soon. Be ready to move when you hear it. This urgency is not random. Heaven is not pacing nervously. It's moving deliberately. But when heaven moves, it moves quickly. And if your heart is not prepared, you can watch your moment pass right in front of you. I once heard about a young man who had been praying for years for a chance to work in his dream field. One day, he was invited to a networking event. It didn't seem like much, but he felt a small nudge to go. At that event, he met the very person who would later hire him into the career he'd been dreaming about. He told me, if I had ignored that nudge, I might still be waiting today. That's the kind of sensitivity God is calling you to right now, paying attention to the little nudges, the small whispers, the seemingly ordinary invitations that carry extraordinary impact. God says, I will guide you, but you must be willing to follow quickly. Quickly doesn't mean recklessly. It means without unnecessary delay. It means responding while the moment is still fresh. Think of it like a door that automatically closes. It's open for a time, but if you stand there debating too long, it shuts. And once it's shut, the opportunity may take a long time to open again. Some of you are standing right in front of one of those doors. It's open now, but not forever. This is why God keeps repeating the same word to your heart, now. Now is when you start. Now is when you obey. Now is when you prepare. Because the version of you that's needed for the next chapter can only be built in the steps you take now. I think of the disciples when Jesus said, "Follow me." They didn't tell him, "Let me finish a few things first," or "maybe next week." They dropped what they were doing and moved. And because of that, they walked into a future they could never have imagined. Sometimes obedience requires leaving something behind. A comfort, a routine, even a relationship that's no longer aligned with your calling. It's not that those things are bad, it's that they're too small for where you're going. God says, I'm taking you somewhere that requires space. Let go of what's taking up the room meant for your blessing. This is why some friendships have faded, why certain opportunities have slipped away, why familiar patterns no longer feel satisfying. It's not rejection, it's release. Release is never easy, but it's often the first step toward receiving what's next. I remember a woman who told me about a job she lost unexpectedly. She thought it was the worst thing that could have happened to her. But 3 months later, she was working in a role that not only paid more, but also gave her time for her family and her health. She said, if I had stayed where I was, I never would have found this. That's the power of release. It makes room for God to replace what you lost with something better. Right now, God is making room in your life. It may feel uncomfortable, even painful, but it's necessary for the future He's preparing. And here's what you need to remember. God never takes without giving. When He removes something, it's because He's making space for something greater. So instead of clinging to what's leaving, lift your hands for what's coming. Because what's coming is going to require your full focus, your open heart, and your trust. This urgency in your spirit is a countdown. It's God saying, we're almost there. And when there comes, you won't have time to scramble. That's why the preparation is happening now. This is also a time to quiet the noise around you. Not every voice needs your attention in this season. If you're always listening to everyone else, you'll miss the still, small voice that matters most. God says, in this season, your clarity will come from intimacy with me. That means spending time in prayer, in worship, in the Word, not out of obligation, but because that's where you'll get your instructions for the next step.
And here's the truth. Sometimes God won't give you a detailed plan. He'll give you a piece of the plan, and the rest will unfold as you walk. That's not because He's withholding from you. It's because He wants you to rely on Him, not the plan. Think of Abraham. God told him, "Go to the land I will show you." No map, no specifics, just a promise. And Abraham went, not because he understood everything, but because he trusted the one who spoke. That's the trust God is calling you into now. It won't always make sense. It won't always feel convenient, but it will always be worth it. This is your season to lean in, to listen closely, and to be ready to move when God says, now, because your future isn't far away anymore. It's right in front of you, waiting for your step.
You may have noticed, the closer you get to something significant, the harder the opposition seems to push. That's not a sign to quit. That's confirmation you're on the right path. God says, the resistance you feel is the proof that what you're walking toward matters. Before a plane takes off, there's a moment of greatest strain. The engines roar, the wheels pound against the runway, and every bit of power is working to lift it into the air. Once it's airborne, the pressure eases. But that takeoff moment, that's the fight. Some of you are in takeoff right now, and God is saying, hold steady, don't pull back, you're about to lift. I once heard about a man who was training for a marathon. In the weeks before the race, his legs started aching badly. He thought about quitting his training. But a coach told him, this pain means your muscles are building strength for the distance. If you stop now, you'll lose the very endurance you're developing. That's where some of you are spiritually. The struggle isn't punishment, it's preparation. God says, I'm building in you the strength to hold the blessing when it comes. Because the truth is, a blessing too heavy for your character to carry will become a burden. That's why He's been refining you, stretching you, removing what's weak so what's strong can remain. And this refining is urgent, not because you're behind, but because the timing of what's ahead is set. Heaven's calendar is moving, and your preparation has to match it. I think of Joseph in the Bible. One day he was in a prison cell, the next he was standing before Pharaoh, interpreting dreams and stepping into leadership. There was no time for getting ready after the moment came. The preparation had already happened in the hidden years. That's your story right now. You may feel hidden, overlooked, or delayed, but God is shaping you in the quiet so you can stand strong in the sudden. Some of you need to hear this. Just because it's quiet doesn't mean nothing is happening. Seeds grow in silence. Foundations are laid underground before a building ever rises. You don't see the whole picture yet, but the groundwork is being completed. God says, don't mistake the silence for absence. I am working behind the scenes. And this is why He keeps urging you to stay ready, because the shift will come suddenly. It might be a conversation that changes everything, a door you didn't even knock on, an opportunity you weren't expecting. And in that moment, you won't have time to prepare. You'll have to be prepared already. I remember a woman who had been applying for jobs for months. She kept her resume updated even when she got discouraged. One day she got a call asking if she could interview the next morning. Because she was already prepared, she walked into that interview confident, and she got the job. She told me later, if I had waited to get ready, I would have missed my chance. That's the urgency God is speaking into you now. Some of you are waiting for motivation to start. But motivation isn't the starting point. Obedience is. You move first, and the strength comes in the moving. God says, I will meet you on the road of obedience. That means your step matters more than your certainty. You may not have every answer, but you have enough to take the next step. This is also a time to be careful about distractions. Not every open door is from God. Some are traps designed to delay you. You'll know the difference by the peace in your spirit. If it steals your peace, it's not for you, no matter how good it looks on the surface. Remember, the enemy doesn't just use storms to derail you. Sometimes he uses comfort. If he can keep you comfortable in the wrong place, you'll stop reaching for the right one. God says, don't settle where you are just because it's familiar. Familiar is not the same as safe.
Sometimes the most dangerous place for your destiny is the comfort zone. And this is why he keeps calling you forward. The road ahead may feel uncertain, but the one leading you is not uncertain at all. Think of Peter again. When Jesus called him out of the boat, the water didn't turn solid until Peter stepped on it. If Peter had waited for the water to look safe first, he would have missed the miracle entirely. That's how your next step will feel. Risky in your eyes, but already prepared in God's hands. So walk, even if it feels like stepping onto water, even if others stay in the boat, because your future is not in the boat, it's in the step. God says, when you move in faith, you'll find I've already gone ahead of you. And when you look back, you'll see that the urgency wasn't to scare you. It was to protect you from missing what was already on its way.
You can feel it. Something is shifting. It's in the way your thoughts have been stirring, the way your heart feels both expectant and unsettled. This is not random. It's the sign that you're standing at the edge of a divine crossing. God says, you are closer than you think. This is why I keep saying it's urgent. Before a bridge appears on a journey, there's often a stretch of road where you can see the destination but not the way across. That's the tension many of you feel right now. You can sense what God has promised, but you can't yet see how He'll take you there. That's where trust becomes your bridge. I once spoke with a man who had been waiting years for breakthrough in his business. Everything seemed stuck. Then almost overnight, a single connection opened doors that had been closed for years. He told me the opportunity had been ready all along. I just wasn't in position to receive it until now. That's exactly what God is aligning for you. The promise has been ready. He's been getting you ready. God says, this is why the preparation has felt intense. It's because the promise is near. Here's what's important to understand. Your breakthrough won't arrive on your schedule, but it will arrive on God's. And His timing is perfect, but it's also precise. If you're out of position when the moment comes, you can miss what's been meant for you all along. That's why He's speaking now. Think of Mary in the Bible. When the angel told her she would give birth to Jesus, the timing wasn't when she felt ready, it was now. And her response was simple, let it be to me according to your word. That's the posture God is calling you into. Not, I'll think about it, not maybe later, but yes, Lord, I'm ready. This yes will require faith that moves faster than your fear, because fear will always try to convince you to wait until the perfect moment, and that moment never comes. I remember a young woman who dreamed of starting her own nonprofit. She kept saying she would do it when she had more money, more connections, more time. Then one day she heard a clear word from God, start with what's in your hands. She obeyed, even with little. Within months, doors opened that she could never have forced open herself. She told me, the blessing didn't meet me in my waiting, it met me in my walking. God says, your future is tied to the steps you take now. Don't delay. This is also a moment to guard your agreement. Your words carry weight in this season. If you speak defeat, you align with defeat. If you speak faith, you align with victory. So speak life over your future. Speak as if the promise is already unfolding, because in the unseen, it is. The enemy's strategy right before breakthrough is often to wear you down with discouragement. If he can convince you that nothing's happening, he can make you stop preparing. But the truth is, this is when the most is happening. The seed is about to break the soil. God says, keep going. Don't let tiredness steal your tomorrow. This is also a season where you must be watchful for divine appointments.
Not every opportunity will arrive with flashing signs and obvious labels. Some will come disguised as ordinary moments. A conversation in the grocery store line, an unexpected phone call, a meeting you didn't even plan. If you're paying attention, you'll see that God can use anything, anywhere, at any time. Think of Ruth in the Bible. She went to glean in the fields to provide for herself and Naomi, and that's where she met Boaz, the man who would change her life and lineage. She wasn't chasing a miracle that day, she was simply being faithful in the moment, and God met her there. That's the posture for you now, faithfulness in the moment, readiness for the miracle. And here's the thing, the urgency is not because you're in danger of losing everything, it's because you're in danger of missing timing. There's a rhythm to what God is doing in your life, and right now, that rhythm is accelerating. God says, match my pace, walk when I walk, stop when I stop, move when I say move. This requires a sensitive heart. It requires tuning out some of the noise that's been distracting you. Not every voice gets to speak in this season. Some people mean well, but they don't carry the vision God gave you. And if you let their doubts shape your steps, you'll end up walking in circles. This is your moment to be bold, to trust God even when you can't see the full picture, to say yes even when you don't have every answer, because He's not asking for perfection, He's asking for obedience. God says, I've gone ahead of you. The road is ready. Now step onto it. You'll look back on the season and realize the urgency was an invitation to step into something bigger, sooner, and more beautifully than you thought possible.
This is it. The moment where the pieces start to come together, where the whispers of the past 9 parts turn into a clear, resounding truth. God says, the time is now. You've carried this word in your spirit for days, weeks, maybe even years. You've felt the pull forward. You've wrestled with fear, with doubt, with uncertainty. But here you are, still standing, still listening, still ready to believe. And that's important, because readiness is the soil where destiny grows. You can't control the rain or the sun, but you can make sure the ground of your heart is ready to receive the seed when it falls. I once knew a man who prayed for years for God to use him, but every time an opportunity came, he hesitated. He said he was waiting for confirmation. What he didn't realize was the opportunities were the confirmation. It wasn't until he decided to say yes quickly that his life began to accelerate into the calling he'd prayed for all along. God says, stop waiting for a feeling of certainty before you move. Your faith is your certainty. This is not about rushing blindly. It's about stepping boldly into what you've already been prepared for. You've been through too much for it to be wasted. Every loss, every delay, every unanswered question has been part of the shaping. And now that shaping has brought you here, to the edge of what's next. Think of a farmer. He plants the seed in one season, then waits. The waiting is not inactivity, it's trust. And when the time comes, the harvest doesn't gather itself. The farmer moves quickly to bring in what's ready. You are standing in your harvest season. It's urgent because what's ripe will not stay ripe forever. God says, lift your eyes. The fields are ready. And here's the thing. Your breakthrough may not look like what you imagined. It may not arrive packaged the way you pictured, but it will be exactly what you need for where you're going. I think of Moses. When God told him to go to Pharaoh, he didn't feel equipped. He didn't feel ready. But God wasn't asking him to rely on his own strength. God was asking him to rely on His. That's what this moment is for you.
You're not stepping into your future alone, you're stepping into it with God at your side. The urgency you feel is heaven saying, I'm opening the door. Walk through it with me. But let me be clear, this isn't just about one door. This is about a chain of events your obedience will set in motion. One yes will lead to the next and the next until you find yourself living in the very place you once only prayed about. And when you do, you'll see that the waiting wasn't wasted. It was the training ground for your suddenly. So here's the question God is placing before you. Will you move now? Will you trust Him enough to act before you see the full picture? Some people will watch this moment pass by and wonder later why nothing changed. But you? You're being given the choice to be the one who says, I didn't just hear God's call, I responded to it. God says, your future is not something to chase, it's something to step into. And the step is now. I remember a story of a young woman who had dreamed of starting her own business, but kept putting it off. One day, she heard a simple message, if not now, when? It stirred her so deeply that she took the first step that very night. Within a year, her dream was reality. She told me later, I thought I was waiting for the right time, but the right time was waiting for me. That's the truth for you today. The right time is waiting for you. So rise up. Dust off the fear. Shake off the hesitation. The season you've prayed for is opening. The answer you've sought is coming into view. The future you've been promised is right in front of you. God says, this is not just about blessing you, it's about positioning you to bless others. Your obedience in this moment will ripple into the lives of people you may never meet. Generations may be impacted by what you decide to do now. This is why it's urgent. Not because you're going to lose everything if you don't act, but because you're meant to gain so much if you do. So here's your invitation, your challenge, your call to action. Step forward. Do the thing God has been stirring in you. Send the message, make the call, apply for the opportunity, begin the work. Whatever that thing is for you, move toward it today. Because one day you'll look back and say, this was the moment my life turned. And you'll thank God you didn't let hesitation steal it from you. God says, it's urgent, it's about your future, and I am with you every step of the way.